The peaceful offering Dr. Marcus Rivera adjusted his translation device one final time, watching the massive Kethvari warship materialize through the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Dawn. The alien craft bristled with weapons, plasma, cannons, missile arrays, and energy shields that pulsed with menacing crimson light. It was a monument to destruction, built by a species that had conquered 47 worlds in the past century. "Still can't believe they agreed to meet," Captain Zoe Lancaster murmured from the command chair, her weathered hands steady on the controls despite the tension crackling through the bridge. "Every intelligence report says the Kethvari don't negotiate. They just take what they want." Ambassador Chen Wei smoothed his diplomatic robes, his expression calm despite the gravity of the moment. Perhaps that's exactly why they agreed. Curiosity about a species that offers peace instead of demanding it. He studied the data pad containing their proposal, a comprehensive non-aggression pact, trade agreements, and cultural exchange programs. Everything humanity had learned about diplomacy over thousands of years, distilled into one hopeful document. The communication array crackled to life, and the bridge filled with the guttural, multi-toned voice of the Kethvari delegation. Through the translation matrix, their words carried barely concealed contempt. "Soft-skinned humans, you request audience with the mighty Kethvari Empire. State your purpose quickly. Our patience runs thin." Dr. Rivera stepped forward, his xenobiology background having taught him to read alien body language. Even through the view screen, he could see the massive armored figures lounging in their command chairs with casual arrogance. "Honored Kethvari, we come offering friendship between our peoples. We've prepared proposals for mutual benefit." Harsh laughter interrupted him, a sound like grinding metal that made the human crew wince. "Friendship?" The lead Kethvari's translated voice dripped with amusement. "You arrive in a ship without weapons, speaking of treaties and trade. Your kind builds gardens where warriors would forge weapons. You sing songs where others sharpen claws." Captain Lancaster's jaw tightened, but Ambassador Chen raised a calming hand. "We believe cooperation yields greater strength than conquest," he replied diplomatically. "Our research stations have made discoveries that could benefit." "Research stations?" Another wave of alien laughter. "Yes, we know of your research stations. Undefended structures filled with soft academics studying flowers and star patterns. Your colonies welcome strangers with open arms instead of raised shields. Your merchant vessels carry gifts instead of guns." The Kethvari leader leaned forward, his 6 eyes gleaming with predatory amusement. "Tell us, weak humans, what happens when those who study your kindness decide it looks like prey?" Dr. Rivera felt ice form in his stomach. This wasn't going as planned. The Kethvari weren't just dismissing their overtures, they were cataloging human vulnerabilities, turning their peaceful nature into a tactical assessment. "We prefer to see the best in others," Ambassador Chen replied carefully. "Perhaps if you reviewed our proposals, you'd see the mutual advantages." "Mutual?" The alien's voice turned sharp. "There is nothing mutual between predator and prey, little human. Nothing mutual between those who take what they want and those who ask politely for scraps." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in suffocating silence. Through the viewport, the Kethvari warship's weapons began to glow with charging energy. Captain Lancaster's hands moved to the emergency protocols. "Ambassador, I think they just gave us their answer." But as warning lights bathed the bridge in red, none of them could have imagined that humanity's greatest strength had always been its choice to be kind. And what would happen when that choice was finally taken away? The humiliation General Patricia Hawthorne stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, watching the galactic news feeds with mounting horror. 3 days had passed since the failed diplomatic meeting, and the Kethvari had wasted no time in broadcasting their contempt across every inhabited system in the galaxy. Pathetic pacifists who mistake weakness for wisdom, the Kethvari. War Chief's voice boomed through the translation matrix, his image displayed on screens from the Centauri colonies to the Outer Rim settlements. "Behold how the gentle humans respond to strength." The feed switched to live footage that made Patricia's blood run cold. The research station Kepler 7, home to 300 scientists and their families, erupted in flames as Kethvari plasma cannons tore through its unshielded hull. She watched helplessly as escape pods launched frantically into space, only to be picked off one by one like target practice. "Sir," Commander Jake Morrison's voice cracked over the comm from his colony. "Ship New Horizon. We're receiving distress signals from the Tau Ceti research facility. They're under attack. The agricultural station at Ross 128 has gone dark completely." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the xenopsychologist who had spent years studying alien behavioral patterns, shook her head in disbelief as she monitored the psychological warfare aspects of the assault. "They're not just attacking our installations, they're making a show of it, broadcasting every moment to maximize humiliation." The main screen flickered to show survivors from Kepler-7 huddled in the debris of their destroyed home. A young researcher, tears streaming down her face, spoke directly to the camera. "Please, Earth, we just wanted to study the stars. We never hurt anyone. Why are they doing this to us?" But the most devastating footage came next. The Kethvari had captured several human families from the agricultural station, parading them before their cameras like trophies. Children clung to their parents while alien soldiers jeered and made threatening gestures, their translated taunts filling the broadcast. "Look at them weep. Look how they beg. This is the mighty human spirit." General Hawthorne's hands clenched into fists as she watched her own people, civilians, researchers, farmers, being humiliated for the entertainment of an entire galaxy. The strategic implications were staggering. Every species in known space was watching humanity's response, measuring their reaction. "General," Commander Morrison reported, his voice tight with barely controlled rage, "I've got 15 colony ships in my sector requesting permission to arm themselves. The civilians are terrified, but they're also angry. They want to fight back." "Negative," Patricia replied, though each word felt like swallowing glass. "Maintain current protocols. We're still pursuing diplomatic channels." Dr. Tanaka looked up from her analysis, her usually calm demeanor cracking. "Patricia, you need to see this psychological assessment. The Kethvari aren't just testing our military response. They're studying our social cohesion. Every act of restraint, every peaceful overture we make, they're cataloging as evidence of weakness." The broadcasts continued relentlessly. The Kethvari had turned the destruction of human outposts into entertainment, complete with commentary and instant replays. They dissected human rescue attempts, mocking the care shown for wounded civilians. They broadcast intercepted human communications, laughing at messages of concern and offers of aid. "Citizens of the galaxy," the Kethvari war chief addressed the cameras directly, "witness the fate of those who choose kindness over strength. The humans speak of peace while their people burn. They offer negotiations while their children cry. This is what happens to soft-hearted species who mistake the universe for a garden instead of a hunting ground." General Hawthorne felt something dark stirring in her chest, something that had been sleeping for generations. She thought of humanity's history, of wars that had raged across Earth for millennia before they reached for the stars. They had chosen to leave that violence behind, to become something better. But as she watched another human research station disappear in flames, as she listened to the desperate pleas of her people being broadcast as entertainment, she began to wonder if their ancestors had been right about one thing. Sometimes kindness was a luxury the universe wouldn't allow. The Kethvari had made their point clear to the watching galaxy. Humanity was weak, their compassion was a flaw, and their peaceful nature made them perfect prey. They had no idea what they had just awakened. The Breaking Point president, Maria Santos, stood in the Oval Office, her hands trembling as she held the final transmission from the colony ship Gentle Dawn. 50,000 refugees, families fleeing the Outer Rim conflicts, children who had never known war, elderly couples seeking peaceful retirement worlds, all aboard one massive vessel that represented everything humanity aspired to be. Fleet Admiral David Park's weathered face was grim as he delivered the report. "Madam President, the Gentle Dawn sent this message 17 minutes ago, then went silent." He activated the holographic display, and the bridge of the colony ship materialized before them. Captain Elena Vasquez appeared in the recording, her usually composed demeanor cracking as explosions rocked the ship around her. This is Captain Vasquez of the colony vessel Gentle Dawn. We are under attack by Kethvari forces. We have 50,000 civilians aboard, including 12,000 children. We are not armed. Repeat, we are not armed. We carry only families, seeking new homes. The transmission flickered as another blast struck the ship. In the background, Santos could hear children crying, parents trying to calm them with lullabies that turned into prayers. Dr. Rebecca Stone, the President's chief strategic analyst, couldn't hide her anguish as she continued the briefing. The Kethvari are broadcasting this attack live just like the others. But this time they're not just destroying the ship. They're boarding it. Early reports suggest they're taking the survivors as entertainment for their conquest celebrations. President Santos closed her eyes, but she couldn't shut out the sounds from the transmission. Captain Vasquez's voice broke as she spoke. To our families on Earth, to everyone listening, we tried to show them kindness. We offered medical aid to their wounded, shared our food with their hungry. They called it weakness. Maybe, they're right. Maybe we were naive to think the universe wanted peace. The recording cut to static, leaving the Oval Office in suffocating silence. Admiral Park cleared his throat, his military bearing barely containing decades of suppressed rage. Madam President, I have 12 battle fleets requesting immediate deployment orders. Our people are crying out for justice. The entire military command structure is ready to... To what, David? Santos interrupted, her voice hollow. To become what they say we are? To prove their point that violence is the only language the universe understands? Dr. Stone stepped forward, her analytical mind struggling with emotional devastation. Maria, I've been studying the psychological impact on our colonies. Morale is collapsing. Our peaceful philosophy worked when we were dealing with civilized species, but the Kethvari, they see our restraint as proof of genetic inferiority. Every day we don't respond militarily, more species begin to view us as acceptable targets. The President walked to the window, looking out at the rose garden where she often found peace. Today, the flowers seemed to mock her with their fragility. I keep thinking about my grandfather, she said quietly. He was a Marine in the Third World War. Used to tell me stories about the things humans did to each other when pushed too far. He said humanity learned to be kind because we knew what happened when we weren't. She turned back to face them. He also said that kindness was only possible when you were strong enough to choose it. A new communication alert chimed, and Captain Vasquez's face appeared again. But this transmission was different. Her uniform was torn, her face bruised, but her eyes blazed with something Santos had never seen before in the gentle captain. Earth Command, this is my final transmission. They've separated the children from their parents. They're using them as props in their victory celebration. The little ones are asking why the bad people are hurting them, why nobody is coming to help. Vasquez's voice hardened to steel. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that we tried peace. We tried understanding. We tried to be better than our ancestors. The transmission cut to the Kethvari broadcast, showing human children in cages while alien crowds cheered. The war chief's translated voice boomed with triumph. Behold the weakness of human love. See how their attachment to offspring makes them helpless. This is why the strong rule and the weak serve. President Santos felt something snap inside her chest. Not breaking, but awakening. The same thing that had driven her ancestors to tame a hostile planet, to survive ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed them. The thing that had been sleeping behind centuries of chosen kindness. Dr. Stone, she said, her voice carrying a new edge. Access the restricted files. All of them. I want every psychological warfare study, every tactical analysis, every military strategy we've developed and buried in the name of peace. Admiral Park straightened, sensing the shift. Madam President? Santos turned to face them both, and they saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there moments before. Something ancient and patient and absolutely terrifying. The Kethvari think our kindness comes from weakness, she said quietly. They're about to learn it comes from choice, and we're about to show them what happens when that choice is taken away. She walked to her desk and opened a drawer that hadn't been touched in 2 centuries, pulling out a simple red button that every human president hoped they'd never have to use. Gentlemen, activate Protocol 7. It's time the galaxy remembered why humans chose to be peaceful in the first place. The revelation, Colonel Nathan Cross materialized from the shadows of the Kethvari command ship's corridor, his stealth suit shimmering back to visibility as plasma charges erupted around him. The alien guards barely had time to register his presence before collapsing, their nervous systems disrupted by weapons that shouldn't have existed. Phantom Team, primary target secured, he whispered into his comm, stepping over the unconscious Kethvari. Lieutenant Hassan, how's the intelligence extraction going? Lieutenant Samira Hassan's fingers danced across the alien computer systems with impossible speed, her neural interface translating and absorbing decades of Kethvari military data in minutes. Almost done, Colonel. Their entire fleet deployment, supply lines, command structure, it's all here. They never bothered with encryption because they thought we were too primitive to access their systems. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out simultaneously. Human operatives who had been disguised as diplomats, researchers, and merchants for years suddenly revealed their true nature. Ships that had appeared defenseless sprouted weapon arrays that defied known physics. Colonies that seemed vulnerable activated shield systems that made Kethvari plasma cannons look like children's toys. Engineer Thomas Wright stood in the command center of what the Kethvari had believed was a simple mining station. Around him, holographic displays showed the true nature of humanity's peaceful expansion. Every research outpost had been a listening post, every diplomatic mission a reconnaissance operation, every act of kindness a way to study their enemies' weaknesses. Bring the main array online, Thomas commanded, his voice carrying an authority that would have shocked the Kethvari who had mocked human, soft engineers just days before. The asteroid around them split open like a flower, revealing weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment for decades. The first strike hit the Kethvari forward fleet, while their commanders were still celebrating their victory over the gentle dawn. In 17 minutes, 43 warships simply stopped, not destroyed, disabled. Their crews found themselves breathing sedative gas while their weapons and engines shut down with surgical precision. What sorcery is this? War Chief Zexmore roared as his flagship systems failed around him. Through his view screen, he watched human vessels decloak, not the peaceful explorers he had mocked, but predators that moved with the fluid grace of apex hunters. The galactic news networks, which had been broadcasting Kethvari victory celebrations, suddenly went silent as human cyber warfare specialists took control of every communications array simultaneously. When the feeds returned, they showed something that chilled every watching species to their core. Colonel Cross stood in the captured Kethvari command center, his face calm, but his eyes holding depths of controlled violence that spoke of millennia, of warfare evolution. Behind him, Lieutenant Hassan displayed holographic records of human military history, the 100 Years' War, the World Wars, conflicts that had raged for centuries before humanity ever left Earth. Citizens of the galaxy, Cross spoke directly to the cameras, his voice carrying the quiet confidence of a species that had mastered violence so completely they had chosen to abandon it. For 200 years, humanity has pursued peace. We built gardens instead of fortresses, offered friendship instead of conquest, chose cooperation over domination. Many of you, including the Kethvari, interpreted this as weakness. The display shifted to show Thomas Wright's mining station fully, revealed its disguised weapons arrays capable of sterilizing entire star systems. Every human colony, every research station, every diplomatic mission has been prepared for this moment. Not because we wanted war, but because we understood that true peace could only exist when backed by the strength to defend it. Lieutenant Hassan's intelligence analysis painted a stark picture across every screen in known space. Humanity studied warfare for 5,000 years before we reached the stars. We perfected the art of the lesson learned. 6 months after the Kethvari War ended, former Ambassador Chen Wei stood in what had once been the Kethvari Empire's capital world. now renamed Haven. Around him, human engineers worked alongside freed alien slaves to rebuild cities that had been destroyed by centuries of conquest. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had dismantled an empire in 17 days, then spent 6 months healing the wounds it had inflicted on others. Captain Victoria Hayes piloted her. Medical frigate Compassion's returned through the debris field that had once been the Kethvari's most feared battle fleet. Her ship, like dozens of others in the Liberation Fleet, carried supplies and medical aid to former enemy worlds. The same hands that had wielded devastating weapons now distributed food, medicine, and hope. Chen, Victoria's voice crackled over the comm as her ship docked with the orbital medical station. You need to see this. We just received surrender requests from 3 more systems: the Vorthak Dominion, the Razor Syndicate, and the Blood Tide Consortium, all asking for terms. Chen, he nodded, unsurprised. The galactic political landscape had shifted overnight. Species who had ruled through fear and brutality for centuries were suddenly discovering that their neighbors had grown tired of predators. In the medical bay, Chen watched human doctors treating wounded Kethvari soldiers with the same care they showed their own people. Dr. Lisa Park worked tirelessly on a young Kethvari warrior who had lost his primary arms in the final battle, her hands steady as she attached cybernetic prosthetics that were more advanced than anything his own people had possessed. Why? The young warrior asked in broken standard, his 6 eyes wide with confusion. Why heal enemy? Why show mercy to those who showed none? Dr. Park paused in her work, considering her words carefully. Because mercy isn't about what you deserve. It's about who we choose to be. We could have exterminated your entire species in a day. Instead, we chose to save you. That's what makes us strong. Across the galaxy, the lesson was being absorbed by countless civilizations. The Valdris hegemony, which had been preparing to test human defenses, quietly withdrew their fleets and sent diplomatic overtures instead. The Crystal Syndicate abandoned their plans to raid human trade routes. Even the ancient Void Hunters, apex predators who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, sent cautious peace envoys to human space. Chen Wei walked through the reconstructed city center, where former Kethvari war chief Zexmore sat in a simple rehabilitation facility. The once mighty conqueror was learning to tend a garden, his clawed hands gentle with seedlings that would grow into the food that would feed his recovering people. I still don't understand, Zexmore said without looking up from the soil. Your people possessed the power to crush us from the beginning. Why the deception? Why allow us to believe you were weak? Chen sat beside him, watching children of a dozen different species play together in the rebuilt park. Because we hoped we wouldn't need to use that power. Every day of peace was a victory more meaningful than any conquest. Every act of kindness was a choice that made us stronger than any weapon. Captain Hayes materialized beside them, her uniform bearing the new insignia of the Galactic Reconstruction Corps. Chen, we've received the final intelligence reports. The galaxy is different now. Tribute systems are being disbanded, slave markets are closing, conquest fleets are being converted to exploration vessels. Everyone's trying to prove they're not a threat. Zexmore's bitter laugh echoed across the garden. Fear. They fear you now as they should have from the beginning. No, Chen corrected gently. Respect. They understand now that our kindness wasn't weakness. It was a choice backed by strength. True power isn't about who you can destroy, but about who you choose to protect. The transformation had rippled through every aspect of galactic civilization. Trade routes that had been controlled by pirates and warlords were now patrolled by voluntary coalitions. Refugee crises that had festered for decades were being resolved through cooperative efforts. Species that had never spoken to each other were forming alliances based on mutual aid rather than mutual fear. In the rebuilt Senate chambers of Haven, representatives from 47 worlds, all former Kethvari conquests, gathered to sign the new Galactic Compact. The document established principles that humanity had lived by for centuries: diplomacy before warfare, protection of civilians, fair trade, and the revolutionary concept that strength should serve compassion rather than the reverse. Captain Hayes read the final clause aloud. Let it be known that peace is not the absence of power but the presence of justice. Let it be remembered that the strongest species are not those who conquer, but those who choose mercy when they could choose destruction. As the ceremony concluded, Chen Wei noticed a group of young beings, human, Kethvari, and dozens of other species, working together to plant new trees in the memorial garden dedicated to the victims of the old ways. They laughed and played as they worked, unconscious of the fact that their cooperation represented the galaxy's hope for a better future. Do you think it will last? Captain Hayes asked, watching the mixed group of children. Chen smiled, remembering the scared diplomat who had once tried to negotiate with beings who saw kindness as weakness. It will last as long as we remember the lesson. Kindness isn't about being unable to hurt others. It's about choosing not to, even when they deserve it. The galaxy has learned that humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology or our tactics. What was it then? Victoria asked. Our choice to be better than we had to be, and now, finally, we're not the only ones making that choice. As the twin sons of Haven set over the rebuilt world, the galaxy settled into its first peaceful night in centuries, protected not by the fear of destruction, but by the promise of a species that had mastered its own darkness and chosen to be a light instead.